My name is Christy Bird McKeeve. I'm the Executive Director of Butte Glen Medical Society and the CEO of Healthy Rural California. Our main speaker is Kiki Nocella, who is the Director of WIPFLE. And today we're going to talk about the 2-year journey, sometimes it can take more, to establish a GME partnership with an academic institution. So please make sure you take some time to fill in the polling questions that popped up when you joined. And I'm going to let one more person in. There we go. These questions will enable us to get to know where you are in the process of establishing a medical residency program and help us guide the rest of the webinar series. Speaking of that series, this is going to be designed as a primer for anyone in the state of California, particularly rural clinical facilities, to get to know the process that comes before even establishing a residency program. What do you need to know to make sure that you are prepared for that journey? And so we have 8 webinars that are coming up. Today is the kickoff, so thank you for joining us. In October, we have the feasibility studies and business plans. In November, we'll talk about state efforts to expand residency programs. In December, it will be the requirements that ACGME has put out in recent years, and you may not be familiar with if you haven't been involved in a residency program in the last decade. So funding opportunities as well, very important. That'll be in January. And then expand or create new, that is the question. There's a lot of different ways that you can establish a residency program. That'll be January 28th. In February, focus on community. We'll talk about the lessons from the campfire that with Butte Glen Medical Society. And then on March 25th is the key to continuity sites, our board certified physicians. Of course, you probably already know this, but all of these are on the cmadocs.org website /GME webinars. And we are recording each one of these so that they will be available on phcdocs.org, either their website or their YouTube channel, Physicians for a Healthy California. And just quick note to say, I wish I had all of these webinars a year ago when Butte Glen Medical Society embarked on our residency task force, started the process to look at how we could establish residency programs in our community. A huge thank you to Physicians for a Healthy California. We have several team members, and especially Lupe Alonso Diaz, who has been a fantastic partner for us. Paradise Medical Group, California Medical Association, and our residency task force through Butte Glen Medical Society. Quick tips, just a real quick breakdown of what I've learned in this year-long process is that we just received news that we're receiving a $1.8 million planning grant to establish a psychiatry residency consortium. I believe Dr. Scott Nichols is on the line, and he has been a key partner to bring this grant to fruition, and we're very excited to start planning the psychiatry residency consortium. I produced a video, it's about 30 minutes, about the journey that we've been on to get to this point of receiving that planning grant. If anybody ever wants to check that out, it's on our Butte Glen Medical Society YouTube channel. My tips are that keeping focused on creating an effective and positive experience for the residents from the very beginning of planning is really important, because the ultimate goal is really to make sure that whatever residency program you establish, that the residents can step in right away and have a positive experience, because that will be an essential way to start the one program, if not more, that you will be bringing into the community. The journey is resource intensive. It takes a lot more money than anybody ever thinks, and it takes a lot longer than anybody could ever imagine. It's not an easy process to establish a residency program, so hopefully these webinars will help you have an easier path. And I like to keep an explorer mentality when you do a feasibility study, when you invite consultants in. Sometimes you get nervous about sharing your dirty laundry, but if you keep that explorer mentality, you can keep positive and create coalitions. So cast a wide net, create a residency task force, involve everybody. Consider partnering with your local medical society. Butte Glen Medical Society has been a little bit unique in that we were leading this effort through the residency task force, but each local medical society has different strengths that can partner with. You can partner with. Prioritize and focus on your greatest need in the community, and then hire a consultant who knows your state and rural communities, as well as the intricacies of graduate medical education. Yesterday, or the day before, California Healthcare Foundation announced new GME resources. So if you look at their website, you'll find a lot of really in-depth white papers and articles about graduate medical education. So that's a new resource that's just popped up. So I am very pleased to introduce the GME Whisperer, Kiki Nocella. She has been an amazing partner for us to get to this point, and she's going to share some really great insight. So Kiki, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand the mic over to you.
Kiki, you're on mute.
There we go. Here I am telling folks I'm not overly talented in how to share my slides, and I can't even get myself off mute. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. All right, then let me get the slides going, or try to. Forgive me. I will figure this out. There we go. We're a Teams environment, and so it's there we go. A little challenging for me to do different. Oh, great. There we go.
You have some extra steps to go through. There you go.
There, and I'll put this, okay. I'll hide that up there. Okay, we are set. So, yes, my name is Kiki Nocella. I head up the graduate medical education service line for Whipley. Whipley is a national CPA consulting firm. We're in 48 states. In California, we, before we were Whipley, we were HFS consultants. Many of you may know us as that. And I joined the firm 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, after having my own consulting practice for 9 years and being in academia for many, many, many years before that. I am a native Californian, so that gives me, I guess, a little bit of street cred as far as knowing this state. And there's few areas in the state that I haven't been at this point. So, you know, this is home. I've been setting up graduate medical education programs or working in graduate medical education programs probably since 1992. That makes me a little older than I want to claim to be, but it's true. And I've worked on pretty much all sides of the house. So I've been in the academic environment. I was faculty at a university. I earned my PhD looking at predictors of family docs in California, practicing in rural California, and have done a lot of work in rural as well. So when Christy first called, it was like, okay, this is a natural to work on and to partner with. Today, what we're going to talk about is a lot about academic partnerships. So that journey. And Christy, you can always feel free to jump in and add color commentary, particularly as it pertains to the journey that you guys went through. But really focusing on that academic partnership, you know, what are the benefits of it? Why do it? You know, what expectations to have? And by all means, I welcome questions. I just don't know if I can see them while I'm looking at these slides. So forgive me if I'm not And you may have to just interrupt if need be, or hold them to the end. Either way is fine. Okay. So do I need an academic partnership is the first question. It's a question I get a lot. And my answer is usually, it depends. Depends on what kind of residency program you're looking to start. There are some residency programs that I will say, don't do it without an academic partnership. General surgery being a perfect example. But something like family medicine, you don't have to have an academic partnership. It's nice, but you don't have to. Same with psychiatry. Internal medicine gets a little harder, but it's still doable. So a lot depends, as I said, on the type of program. Let me not go there yet. The perspective of options. People seem to think that's an all or nothing. Either if you're sitting, unfortunately, on the academic side, you're sitting there thinking, well, we sponsor the program, we run the program, we're really the only ones qualified to design curriculum and evaluate residents and provide faculty development. So therefore, community, which is over here on the other side with good old Homer, yeah, they can't do that. Okay, how could they possibly be able to deliver a quality medical education program? And, you know, the flip side's there as well, right? The community saying, yeah, but we really don't want to have to deal with that 800-pound gorilla who, my pet said to me, are so focused on all the letters after their name. Okay. And there's nothing in between. It's either community sponsors it and is without the benefit of academia, or academia sponsors it, but they don't get community, right? So that's kind of the common perspective. I argue that there is a continuum. It isn't black or white like that. It's not Homer or Lisa. It is a continuum. And there are a continuum of options with, on one end, no affiliation at all. Okay? And as I said, you don't have to have one, but it might be nice. Okay? That no affiliation at all, in the middle along the continuum, can be a variety of free or contracted services. Now, free is always good, but it doesn't always come to you that way. So let's talk contracted first, because that's kind of easier to wrap your arms around. Contracted services can be things such as leasing faculty. Okay? Contracted services can be purchasing faculty development. Contracted services can be hiring an epidemiologist or a statistician to help with your scholarly activity. So those are some kind of typical examples of contracted services. Free services tend to be in the areas of having access to 24/7 library services, having access to institutional review board, getting voluntary faculty appointments, and sometimes, depending on the academic institution, getting the name of the academic institution on the diploma of the resident. You don't have to be over here with the university as a sponsoring institution for the university to add their name to the residency program, put their name on a diploma. But that depends on the individual university. Okay, they're not all the same when it comes to that. Some universities will help with startup, you know, and provide guidance. A great example is Washington University and their WWAMI program, WWAMI standing for Washington, Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho. In that WWAMI program, they have historically helped and assisted for free outlying sites to develop their residency programs, help them with the application and things of that nature, right? But that's more of a that's on one end of a continuum. A lot of academic institutions never go that far, okay? So when looking at academic institutions, it really comes down to where on this continuum you want to fall and what are you willing to give to get, right? So let me go to the next one. When you need to decide, or when you're trying to decide what model works for you, you first have to decide who is the sponsor going to be. Now, the sponsor of a residency program is the one that has complete authority and responsibility for the academic and financial integrity of a residency program. It's where the buck stops. It's where the financial losses hit. It's where decisions are made about curriculum and whether it is meeting requirements. And they have the right at any time to make changes in order to uphold that responsibility for financial and academic integrity. So what that translates to is control, okay? And I'm not gonna say, now let me back up. Control for many is an ugly word. For me, it's just a realistic word. So I don't mean for anybody to get their back up and say, well, we would never be controlling, or whatever the response is gonna be. The fact is, if you've got full academic and financial responsibility, you have control. And there's only so much I can put into a legal agreement to mitigate that control for the other party, okay? So that's the first cut. The next cut has to do with funding sources, because there are some funding sources that academic institutions cannot access. And the main one there is the Federal Teaching Health Center funding. Okay, academic institutions and hospitals cannot apply for those. And so if you're sitting in a community that has a very low anticipated GME reimbursement for Medicare, or the hospital already has capped, it's not GME naive, and we can talk about that if anyone needs or wants definitions. You may want to look at teaching health center funding, in which case automatically the sponsoring institution is not going to be an academic institution. It is not going to be a hospital, okay? So then in a situation like that, you're looking at, okay, we're a community-based entity or a community-based consortium. How are we going to partner with academia in a non-sponsoring relationship, in a relationship something other than that far right extreme? Because maybe we still value some of what they can give us, but we can't have them sponsor it because of funding. Okay. Another factor to look at what model works for you is the perceived or real benefits. And again, that gets into contracted services as well as things like a halo effect. You know, some residents really want to match in a program that has the name of an academic institution on it. I've seen times when the academic institution has absolutely nothing to do with the program except an affiliation name, but for whatever reason, it's still perceived in a way that that residents are drawn toward it. Now, that's not exactly the ideal anybody ever wants to work for, but there is a halo effect, right? You put an academic institution's name on it, there is a halo effect. And then finally, we can never forget about politics. Politics always play into this decision as to who will sponsor. You know, and I can tell stories, but we'll just leave that one there. So let's say you have decided you want to do a residency program, and you've decided you want an academic partner, or you think you want an academic partner. You haven't necessarily decided who's sponsoring. How are you going to go about developing that partnership? Okay. So there are 4 steps in general. Some seem kind of obvious, right? And I'm going to drill down into each of these steps next. So first is finding a suitable partner. Well, first you got to know somebody or be willing to, you know, kind of smile and dial your way into the academic institution, right? If you're lucky, you know somebody. In the case of Buglen Medical Society and this region, they definitely knew people. They knew a lot of people. And in making those initial calls, know that, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but geography doesn't matter. It does not matter if the academic institution is down the street or in another country, right? It doesn't matter as an academic partner. Now, it's rare that I see it with another country, but I do see it. And I definitely see it across state lines. You're going to look for an academic partner that aligns with your mission. Not only the mission of your organization, but the mission of your sponsoring institution, whatever entity that turns out to be, and the mission of your program. And there are some academic institutions that are very primary care focused, some that are not. There are some that are very research focused, some that are not. There are some that are focused very much on a mission of serving the underserved, some that are not. You know, I mean, we can all think of names of academic institutions and put them in some buckets, right? It's critical that you find an academic institution that shares your mission. Do they offer, the next one is, do they offer a menu with more than one model on it? I remember a CEO friend of mine years ago, probably over 20 years ago, saying to me after a meeting, well, we've all been to a restaurant where they have one thing on the menu. And you can find that with any organization, but with academic institutions, the one thing on the menu may be, this is our model. This is the only model we offer. Our model looks like this. We sponsor, we employ faculty, we employ residents, you're the site, as an example, right? You're going to want a dialogue in finding that suitable partner, and a dialogue that allows you to design the model together rather than just accept the one thing that is given to you. Because all healthcare is local and it needs to work locally with your community and your region. The next gets to interest and bandwidth of a specific faculty member, most likely the program director. So let's say, and I'm just going to kind of stick with family medicine for a minute, even though our first thing out the gate with Buglen is psych. Every faculty member at a university has their thing, their research, their grain of sand that they are adding to the head of a pin. It's kind of like what we describe it at. Their shoulders that they are standing on of the giants that came before them. And so if you keep that in mind, you then realize that you can't just go to any given person and say, hey, you want to work with us on developing a residency program, or if you want to work with us developing a family medicine residency program. Well, first, you've got to be in the realm of family medicine to have that conversation. So that's your first limiting piece. Second, you're not going to talk to, most likely not going to talk to a heavily urban environment about starting a residency program in family medicine that is growing C-section capable family docs. Okay, probably not going to happen. You've got to find a faculty member, preferably the program director, that fits your vision and whose research and interests clinically and academically align well with it. Okay, so I'm not making it sound easy because it really isn't. Okay. And that person has to have some time, right? So ideally, you've decided you want a family medicine program, you've found an academic institution that shares your values, you go to the family medicine department and the family medicine program director to now see if there's further alignment. It rarely, if ever, works to go to the university president or the medical school dean, because in academia, The decisions lie at the department level. Can things be influenced by a med school dean? Sure. But usually the decisions lie at the department level. And so you're going to want to get to a department chair, and then even more so, again, to that program director. Okay. Now there's some one-offs there. If you take UC Davis as an example, they have a whole infrastructure involved with getting out into rural communities, getting out with a residency program network. If you take Washington University example, whammy, whole infrastructure. So there, in examples like that, examples like Davis, I might not go first to the program director. I might go first to that infrastructure. Okay. Because they're set up and value doing that. You've got to see if they have willingness and ability to partner with community-based entities in a healthy way. We're real good in academia of talking about our ability to partner with the community, but rare are they able to really do it. And a healthy partnership is not helicoptering in, getting what you need and helicoptering out. A healthy relationship is starting from the very beginning on equal footing in planning, design, implementation, evaluation, and publication if that's warranted. It's being on equal footing with selection of faculty and selection of residents. Okay? If the academic institution can do that, that's golden. Okay? Next is, are they willing to, and I'm going to get on this one more in a little bit, but are they demonstrating a willingness to come see you, to see your community and meet with your community members? Or are you always expected to go to them? Simple little thing, but it speaks volumes again. All right, so sharing the vision and value proposition. First, you got to know what your niche is. I've alluded to it. So, for example, in psychiatry, with what we've designed for Butte Glen, Medical Society and Behavioral Health of Butte County, we are looking at a psychiatry program that is heavily influenced with trauma-informed care. So not just some didactics here and there, but a foundational element throughout all of the years of training. That's their niche. Their niche is going to be trauma-informed care in a rural environment. You want to find a group that is going to be more along that line, who respects and gets that and is intellectually curious about that. Is your niche and value proposition compatible with your partners? What is the value proposition for both of you? Because you each have different reasons to get into it. Is it money for a hospital or a clinic? How does it fit your strategic business objectives? Got to tell you, when COVID hit, residency training was not on anybody's strategic business objectives for a number of months. It just died. You know, nobody was talking residency training because strategic business objectives suddenly turned into surviving, right? Now that has shifted. We're back in oh my gosh, we have a huge workforce shortage mode. But you've got to know their strategic business objectives, and they've got to know and appreciate yours. What's the value proposition from a marketing PR perspective? That gets into, for a community, that halo effect. But what's the marketing PR value proposition for the academic institution? You got to know that. You got to know why they're looking at doing this. Community health, my favorite topic. What's the value proposition there for you and for them? You know, where was this? Shoot, I'm trying to think where I was having this conversation recently. Oh, I know where it was. Okay. A large county in California, and there we were talking about their need in regards to certain diseases and the high mortality rates they have due to certain diseases, and their need for data and population health in order to address those health disparities. So in a group like that, you want a university that has that sort of attention to scholarly activity in that kind of arena. And then, of course, scholarly activity, that is always, always, always a value proposition for an academic institution. And for you as a community-based entity looking at a residency program, you too have scholarly activity requirements. And so you have a value proposition in partnering with someone who can help with that if you don't have the resources in-house. Okay. And then finally, you have to decide you want to be a teaching organization and take on all that this entails. Next, institutional commitments. Another step in developing these partnerships, you got to do financial impact analyses on all parties, all entities. Everybody's got to know how this impacts their bottom line. Got to map out the fund flows, who's paying who for what and why. And this gets heavily into reimbursement issues from Medicare. And you have to develop, and I'll get on this a little bit more, but legal agreements that address things like governance. How will decisions be made regarding the community-based program if the academic institution is the sponsor? Conversely, how will the reputation of the academic institution be protected if 100% of decisions about the community-based program is based in the community? Okay. Right of first refusal regarding the program, I'll get into that more, but you want to address what happens should things fall apart. And rights and input of any entity that's not the sponsoring institution. So let's just say an academic institution is the sponsor. That means you don't have control as a community-based organization. That means you're not designing the curriculum. It's theirs to design. But you have really strong feelings about fill in the blank. You really want your residents to get embedded in an understanding, to develop knowledge, skills, and capabilities in fill in the blank. How do you influence that? Even more importantly, how do you influence resident and faculty interview and selection so that you have a chance of getting them to stay? I have a client, I highlight this client a lot without giving out names. It's not in California, and it has over 120 residents each year that rotate through their clinics. They do not sponsor any programs. And in 10, 15 plus years of doing this, they have retained one resident. One. 120 plus a year, they've retained one. Why? They're not involved in interview and selection. And so the selection that happens for this large federally qualified health center that serves a Latinx population is the academic institutions are picking based on their criteria, not on what criteria of mission, ability to speak other languages, commitment to the underserved that the FQ is looking for. And finally, complete all the institutional commitments, all legal agreements before applying to ACGME for the residency program. Seems like a no-brainer, but I've seen it happen where it wasn't done and then the whole thing falls apart after accreditation. So that's not good. Finally, as far as steps, you got to plan for the longevity. This is a marriage, okay? These are residents' futures at stake. You have a program go down in the middle of their training, it turns into a hot mess for them and a lot of unnecessary, undue stress. Okay? I won't dive down that rabbit hole right now, but it's rough. So think about a marriage. You know, did they come and pick you up on your first date? Now, I may be a little old school. I've already dated myself, I guess, but did the academic institution come and visit your sites? That's the equivalent, right? Did they bring you flowers? I mean, I know I'm being a little silly here, but when I was an academic, my Rolodex, again, I'm dating myself, my Rolodex was very easy to open up and say, here, you need a contact with, no problem. Here, let me give you 5. But people are still, to this day, very guarded about things like their Rolodex or their contact list or whatnot. Why? Are they willing to open things up for you and make it easy, giving things that cost them nothing to give? Do all the parties believe in long marriages? Okay, because again, this is for the long haul. This is not, we're just going to do enough psychiatrists until we filled a couple slots internally in our community and then we're shutting it down. That's not the way these things roll. I create joint operating committees so that in addition to what's known as the Graduate Medical Education Committee, so that the individual entities have a forum to talk and resolve issues before they turn into big, hairy messes. In contracts I develop, we do regular check-ins required by contract and the true-ups of financials. Annually, financials are trued up, meaning everybody puts their numbers in based on a pro forma model that is decided upon upfront. So nobody can come back and say, oh, but wait, I forgot about this expense. That requires transparency, not just transparency of financials. That's critical, but it's transparency towards everything. Okay, transparency towards strategic objectives as it pertains to medical education. Okay, you can't say we are creating a consortium as an example, but then turn around as another entity and start your own sponsoring institution and start a competing program. No, that's not transparency. Okay. The academic institution can't steal one of your faculty members, or the community-based entity can't steal one of their faculty members. That's not being transparent. The prenup, always put in unwind provisions. Why? Because it's the residents' lives at stake. And if you, one thing you'll get from me time and time again is all that really matters here is the residents. It's their livelihoods this is about. It's their education. It's their future ability to practice. So you've got to have unwind provisions, and one that I will often put in is right of first refusal for one of the other parties should the current sponsor decide they don't want to sponsor it anymore. Another one I'll put in is unwind that calls for a certain length of time to unwind so that the residents can complete their training. Things like that. And finally, there are a lot of people in this marriage. And everybody needs to be active partners. You may not have a dog in this fight on this issue, but you're still an active partner for the program. Okay.
You don't necessarily have to partner with a university to have this thing happen, because that's my big concern for Butte is we don't have a player at the table saying ready to go. We've got a lot of providers who want to be part of this.
You don't have to. Oh, go ahead.
The academic institutions that are interested.
Okay, willing to sign on the dotted line and say, let's move forward. We've had nibblers, I'd call them.
Nibblers aren't bad. I mean, there's some who don't even have nibblers. I'll share with you, but you don't have to. It adds to your credibility as far as a halo effect, and there are certain things that they can provide that you may not be easily able to provide. So you have to ask about scholarly activity and faculty development, 24/7 library services, and depending on the type of program, sometimes a sim center. I'm not worried about a sim center for psych, needless to say. That would be interesting. So you've got to ask, why do we want it? And they have to ask themselves the same. I will suggest that the nibblers will start nibbling a little harder as they see you making more and more headway.
They may want to see us have more of a definition of what the consortium will be. Do you think, Kiki?
Yes, and they're always, and I don't want to make this sound bad at all, but they always worry about, and understandably so, the use of their name and their reputation. You know, they don't want to put XYZ institution on a residency program and then have the residency program either go down or produce residents that aren't passing their boards or aren't doing well. You really have to stand in their shoes. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Hi, Kiki. This is Sumeda Gulati from PHC. I enjoyed the presentation. I have a question about what timeline considerations would you recommend in developing the partnership? Other than, of course, you have ACGME requirements, that's one reference point, but from your experience, what timelines?
You want to start discussion, start hunting down the right people to talk to, start identifying which academic institutions are sharing in your mission and vision as soon as you know what your mission and vision is, as soon as you have that first glimmer of wanting a residency program, because these relationships take time to develop. You know, sometimes it can happen really fast if you've got people who already have connections to each other. But if it's totally a cold call and they don't know you from Adam, it's going to take a long time. Now, on the ACGME application, it will ask you if you've got an academic affiliation. So it's great if you intend to have an academic affiliation to speak to that at that point in time. Otherwise, you can get it later. But that's, you know, you can get it later as well. So I would say the first glimmer that you have of starting a residency program.
I'll jump in and say that while we were working on the psychiatry residency program, we had 2 weeks, which is way not enough time, to apply for the Teaching Health Center GME application for family medicine. So our second priority in Butte, Glenn, is to have a family medicine residency behind the psychiatry one. And so Kiki and I, we really tried and we gave it our all. We found a small hospital in our county that was really interested in making this happen and introduced them to an academic institution. But the responses were interesting. They didn't know this small hospital, and they didn't know anybody that they could turn to say, well, what do you think about a family medicine residency here? And then they got really excited thinking about someone north of us because they knew those people. So that actually was one of the reasons why I wanted this particular webinar to happen, because it was so eye-opening. It was like, here we are saying we believe in this little hospital, and it just didn't, it was obvious it was going to take a good 2 years for them to feel comfortable with that hospital, even with our good recommendations. And when we heard about the psychiatry residency program as something that had been considered for 10 years, prior to last September 2019, it came to us as a potential agreement with UC Riverside. So Kiki said in the beginning how, you know, your academic affiliation can come from anywhere. And it was interesting because here we are north of Sacramento, and it was like, oh, we can't partner with UC Riverside because they're not in Northern California, which is our territory, right? And it was just fascinating to see. It could have been. It wasn't going to be that way, but UC Riverside to Chico, California, you know, Northern California is possible. Do you have to have a rural track with the affiliation with an academic institution?
No. It's a way that, a lot of times it's a way to get something started and to get physicians in the community, in the rural community, in the mode of teaching and scholarly activity and faculty development, gets them kind of rolling that way. But there are multiple challenges financially to doing that. In regards to if it's a GME naive hospital they're at, or which is the case with Butte County, it would have been a GME naive hospital and would have totally caused problems the way it was designed in their financial reimbursement. Also, the definition of rural that works for rural training tracks in order to get paid is a very limited one that doesn't work in a lot of areas of California.
Great, well, thank you. And our next webinar is going to be October 22nd on feasibility studies and business plans. Personally, my favorite topic. We, as a psychiatry residency, intent on making this happen, We did not have a feasibility study for several months, and it was really the turning point that enabled us to get to apply for funding and really uncovered some wonderful GME reimbursements that we were not aware of when we started the process. So that's a good one to be part of October 22nd.